Alright guys, welcome back. Feeling a little better today. We're gonna try and make a valiant effort at one final attempt at getting this coupler, or what's left of this coupler, not off the end of the countershaft. So wish me luck. I'm just gonna use a die grinder, and I'm gonna cut a few more relief slots in this thing. You can see I cut it at an angle around the shaft, but I'm going to cut, I guess you could say, parallel with the shaft. The issue is I didn't want to get too close to that bearing, but I decided to try and locate a replacement shaft and bearings and coupler. So one of the things that I mentioned before is when these things have a spring failure inside the hydraulic pump, that gets jammed inside the gears, and that'll cause that pump to lock up, and then this coupler will tighten itself kind of over tight on this shaft. And these are fine threads, so it doesn't take much to get these threads really messed up. Another scenario I thought of is when they took this thing apart to do the brazing on the bottom side where that crack is. I wonder if they cross-threaded this and, figured, it's never going to come off again, so they just ran it on. That's another possible option. Third option would be, well, it's, the heating and cooling. I could have kind of partially welded that coupler to the shaft, which is entirely possible too. So we'll make some more relief cuts and see if we can't get this thing off and go from there. So yeah, I'll turn the camera off while I do the cutting, but we'll kind of show you some progress as we make it. So stay tuned. Well guys, we've achieved success. As you can see, we've got an empty case. No reverse idler, no countershaft. Everything in the rear is gone. All the bolts have been stripped out of it. I tried to take one of these dowel pins out because the replacement casing is missing a dowel pin, but it's got the two rearward most pins, so that should keep everything in alignment. I'm not too concerned about this single front pin, so it is what it is on the pins. But here is kind of the carnage from what we've got. So this is the seal carrier. Now these I think are made of maybe cast aluminum, because it sure seems like it melts. This must be cast aluminum, so it seems like it melts fairly easily. It's either that or some type of other pot metal. This is the seal that goes inside the seal carrier and the spring. So this is the original IH seal. I can still see the logo on it. The gasket. This is what's left of the coupler, so the piece that threads onto the end of the shaft. And yeah, it was whatever was holding it on there, it must have been just on there incredibly tight, so it must have had some type of pump failure or something, because the threads look good, it would not come off. So going forward to the front of the shaft, what I had to do was notch it in 4 places, that coupler, and then I actually had to heat it up to get it to spread, because that thing is so thick. I mean, you're talking probably at least a 1/4 inch thick, if not 3/8. It's a very thick piece, so I had to cut it in 4 places and then heat it up in order to get it to pry away from the shaft. But but I did get it off the shaft, and the end of the shaft didn't end up too banged up, but there's a couple mushroom spots here. And then there is a spot where I got the threads with the die grinder just a little bit. So I'll probably use that other shaft given that. Plus, this end has now been heated and cooled 4 or 5 times, so I'm not too confident on how brittle this is since it's a hardened shaft. But this bearing is now junk. I've cut into the races, but that's okay because we got replacement bearing coming. The constant mesh gear is just fine. This is your 3rd, 4th drive gear. That's the one that Jim sent us a replacement for. And I think this is your 1st, 2nd in reverse, maybe. I'm not exactly sure, but this one's in pretty good shape. The rear teeth have a little bit of rounding on it, but it's not too bad. So I think we'll reuse that one. Otherwise, we'll compare it to a couple of the other gears we've got over there to see which one is the best. The rear bearing is just fine. So the way I had to get this off was to use a really long punch and punch it from the front back to get it off the shaft. And then the whole shaft will slide backwards. You can tip the front end up and then bring it up through the casing, through the top side. So that's how that came out. This is your reverse idler. In order to remove this, you have to remove the bolt here that goes through the top of the casing. I'll kind of show you here the place I'm talking about. So right here, that bolt goes through, down through the shaft, and then once that's out, the whole shaft is loose, so you just have to drive the shaft forward. And on this end here, there's a freeze plug, so you just knock that freeze plug out. I just used the shaft itself when I was driving it forward. It popped right out. And then just take the whole shaft out through here, and then your gear assembly will come out through the top. So there's not much to it. A couple things to be wary of if you're ever in here. Make sure you check this oil delivery hole. So this trough here has a hole up top. I don't know if you can see in there, but there's a hole there that drips oil down, and then there's a hole here that oils this bushing. So make sure you check that, because these are known to be plugged, so your reverse shaft isn't getting any oil in those journals other than what splashes up there. So let's see what else. I wanted to touch on the casting number from the replacement casing versus this one. This is 429L. That's April 29th, 1942. L stands for the 42 year. And this one, I believe, is May of... oh no, February 2nd of 43, 22M. So they're not even a year apart in casting, which is pretty cool. They're both wartime castings, so that's kind of cool. But that's fully disassembled as far as the case goes. Like I said, we've got a different set of gears here. Let's see. Here's yeah, this one's in about the same shape. I'd say this is our first and second, and this would be 3rd and 4th drive gear. This is your constant mesh gear. Again, these are just a couple more reverse idlers that I grabbed while I was at the salvage yard there. But I'd say, just looking at these two, the one that came out of the original casting is probably going to be the one we'll use. This is an extra bearing, and it's actually really good. So that's oh, these are the freeze plugs for the reverse idler shaft, so they would go in the casting on the front side. I got a couple of those. Yeah, that's it's kind of where we're sitting. So we'll just take it from here. We got to bring these down to my cousin's shop, the castings here, to clean them, and then I think it's reassembly time. So the only seals I have to knock out of the casting are the brake and clutch shaft seals. So these, one on each side here, these have to come out on the new casting. So that's kind of where we're sitting. So I don't know. We did it. You know, it's not the way we wanted to do it, but sometimes that's how it goes. Excuse me. But that's gonna do it for this this episode. And Squatch, if you're watching, I'm finally getting into the big leagues. So we'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Thanks for wrenching with me, and till next time. Alright guys, real quick. I know I said I was done, but I got this other case out in the sun, and it's a good thing we're changing this out, because I found another hairline crack coming out of that braze and going right towards the embossment where the axle goes. So I don't think you'll be able to see it, but right here there's a crack that starts in the braze and goes all the way underneath this puddle and right to this boss. So it's a good thing we're changing this thing out, because that would have definitely caused us trouble. Oh yeah, it goes all the way right in here. So it's probably about almost 2 inches long. So that definitely would have caused us some trouble. I don't see any other cracks, but either way, we've got the replacement case on the stands just to keep it out of the snow if it starts flying. And yeah, a whole lot of parts behind it. So stay tuned for the next video. It'll probably be maybe doing the seals in the PTO and the seals in the axle housing end caps and belt pulley. Other than that, it's just all about cleaning. So we'll talk to you guys later.